Welcome back to today's video where we take a final look at my first model railroad layout, the Dystopia Project, before I dismantle it. I'll share some of the inspiration behind it, some of its unique features, and the reason why it's time to say goodbye. Join me as we explore what this project has meant to me and what comes next. Let's get started. When the pandemic struck, I decided that I wanted to work on a model railroad. I had had a few different railroads over the years, but it had probably been a decade since I'd last done any sort of modeling. There was a project railroad called the Carbondale Central, modeled by Malcolm Furlow, that I wanted to duplicate, but I'd never bothered because it was near impossible to find affordable urban kits. That was until I discovered Outland models, and really it was discovering these models that probably got me started on this railroad. The kits were very affordable, and I decided that I could build an entire urban cityscape using them, and I decided that if I took the four sides of the model and turned that into either four fronts or a front and a side, I could double the number of models that each kit produced. So with a track plan that was already designed and some kits that would make the scenery affordable, I decided I was going to start building an urban layout. And because the pandemic had just started, I decided that what theme would be more appropriate for an urban layout than one that was post-apocalyptic or dystopian. Some of the things that I was initially attracted to and still like was the multi-level design, the railroad on the base layout and the city above it. I always thought that was a great look, and it's something I've incorporated into my new layout. I also really liked the look of the elevated highways that spanned across the different tracks. And really, the overall design of the layout, with the railroad tracks sitting behind a city, was really interesting to me. Rather than a front and center railroad, this was a small pike that was hid from the public view and was gritty and dirty and hidden. So I started my new layout, the Union Project, almost 2 years ago. And at that time, I assumed that I would come back to the original Dystopia layout and work on it from time to time. But that hasn't happened. I didn't dismantle the layout originally because I did have some sentimental attachments to it, and in the back of my head I assumed I might be continuing it and working on maybe some dioramas or finishing it up. But over a year and a half later, it's obvious that I'm not coming back to the layout and it's taking up space. So I decided it was time for it to go. Truth be told, this isn't a difficult thing for me to do. I've learned over the years that I'm a person that really enjoys the journey more than the destination, and a lot of the projects that I take on in the hobby or outside of the hobby are more about the process than the product. I just really enjoy learning and making and doing, and when I'm done, while I may be happy with the outcome, that really wasn't the reason that I took on the project in the first place. So while I am very happy with parts of the layout and how they turned out, the enjoyment was making them, not necessarily looking at them. The truth is, I've got the enjoyment out of it, so I don't feel too badly about moving on to the next thing. So the little Dystopia layout has been a huge influence on the railroad that I'm currently working on, the Union Project. When I started the original Dystopia layout, I wanted something small and compact that gave me an opportunity to do a lot of urban scenic modeling. This layout taught me that I prefer rail fanning and that I like longer passenger equipment. I also learned that I really enjoy urban scenery, in particular the size differences between, let's say, a skyscraper and trains and highways and people. I really like the look of tall buildings and wide highways and long expanses of track, and this little railroad lacked most of those elements, and so I was unhappy with it. I also learned that you need a lot of staging if you want to run some trains. This layout design was very limited, it had very little staging, it had almost no operational potential, and it became boring very quickly. So this deeply influenced the layout I'm building now, insofar as it's got some staging, it has some hidden staging, it has long expanses of straight track, and it lets me run multiple trains in different directions. So many of the structures on this layout have already been migrated to my new layout. Some of the more ridiculous structures like the Ghostbuster Firehouse will become background or obscured structures, but almost every other building is going to make it onto the new layout in the elevated city area. I did salvage all of the turnout controls, and I have saved all of the elevated highways for posterity's sake. As for the turnouts and track, they are too permanently affixed to the baseboard to be removed, and so I will not be saving any of those pieces. For me, I've learned I need to balance between scenic opportunities and rail fanning experiences. I've learned that I'm less interested in operations, and therefore track plans can reflect this. I've learned that I like continuous running, and my new layout incorporates that. I've learned that there's a big advantage to mounting your roadbed and track to a styrofoam base as opposed to a plywood base. My new layout is made with plywood, and I've had a lot of problems with humidity affecting the benchwork and warping the track. Documenting the layout was another facet of the hobby of building this layout, so everything I've done has been documented, and a good portion of that has been shared publicly. I still have hundreds of photographs and hours of footage that are saved on hard drives. So I've done my due diligence in documenting every stage of the layout, which is maybe the reason I don't feel so badly about getting rid of it now. It's interesting because I have two friends that have been forced to dismantle their layouts in the past 6 weeks. And in each case, it has everything to do with being forced to move to a new location. I think the first piece of advice I would give people is to consider that when they're building their layout, not to make their layouts modular, but to build the layout with the thought that someday they may need to dismantle it, and design the benchwork accordingly. I think the second piece of advice I would give would be to consider what about the layout you enjoyed. In my case, building the layout is what I enjoyed, and so dismantling and working on a new project means that I'm still going to be doing what I enjoy, which is building a new layout. I would also recommend for people to consider that this is an opportunity. I've had 3 or 4 other layouts over my lifetime, and when I built the small Dystopia project, I thought that I had solved all the problems that I'd encountered in the past, and it turned out I hadn't. Even on the new Union project, there are some decisions I've made that I wish I could revisit and do again. So while getting rid of a project can be heartbreaking, I think having the opportunity to do things differently and better is exciting. So it goes without saying that the Dystopia layout has been a significant part of my model railroading adventure. I hope this video has given you some insights into the practical aspects of concluding a long-term project. I'm looking forward to keeping the spirit of the Dystopia layout alive and well in the new Union project. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.